I bought my mom a house and took care of all the bills, but at a family gathering, she told everyone I just give them headaches. Everyone sided with her until I finally said I wouldn't keep funding their fancy lifestyle anymore. Even after she spoke, I could still hear her words echoing in my mind long after the moment had passed. "You never do anything but cause us trouble," she said. The dining room fell into a heavy silence, with my family avoiding eye contact. My uncle stirred his coffee, my aunt shifted uncomfortably in her seat, and my cousins suddenly found their phones way more interesting. And nobody, not one person, spoke up in my defense. That hurt worse than I wanted to admit. I had bought this house for my mom, paid every bill, electricity, water, groceries, even the internet my younger cousins streamed their shows on. I made sure she never had to worry about money or choose between a warm house and full fridge. Yet, in front of everyone, she dismissed me as if I was nothing. I clenched my fists under the table, forcing myself to keep my expression neutral. I wasn't going to let them see me break. "That's not fair," I finally said calmly but firmly, voice steady. "I cover all the expenses, the house, the bills, the groceries, and she never misses a chance to remind me." She snapped at me, cutting me off. "You act like you're doing us all a favor, but a real daughter wouldn't keep score." A real daughter. I swallowed hard, feeling a lump form in my throat, then looked around the room. My brother Jason sat back in his chair with his arms crossed and an unreadable look on his face. My sister-in-law avoided meeting my eyes. The cousins stayed quiet. No one was on my side. I took a deep breath and said, "Okay." My mother frowned. "Okay, what?" "Okay," I repeated, standing up and pushing my chair back. "If my help is such a burden, then I won't be burdening you anymore." The atmosphere grew tense. My mom's lips parted slightly, probably expecting me to argue or beg for some kind of acknowledgement. But I was done pleading for something that should have been given freely. "I'm finished paying for this house. I'm done covering your bills. I'm tired of funding this whole family while being treated like I don't matter." My uncle coughed awkwardly, my aunt's eyes widened, Jason finally leaned forward. "Hold on," I cut him off, shaking my head. "You all sat here and let her say that to me. You all let her act like I'm just a bother," I added. "So fine, let's see how you manage without me." With that, I grabbed my purse and started to turn away. And that's when panic hit me. I walked out of that dining room with my head held high, but the second I stepped outside, my hands started trembling. My breathing was faster than I wanted it to be, my heart was pounding fiercely against my chest. I'd done it, I'd finally set a boundary after all these years. But instead of feeling relieved or free, I just felt empty inside. I got into my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I knew what was coming next. My mom would twist my words around, the family would rally behind her, and pretty soon, they'd paint me as the selfish, ungrateful daughter who abandoned her family. But this time, I refused to let them pull me back in. My phone buzzed in my pocket. "Mom, come back inside," the message said. "You're overreacting," another text followed. Then Jason's message, "What are you doing? You can't just walk out like that." I turned off my phone and drove away. The next few days were eerily silent, no calls, no texts, just dead silence from everyone. It felt like the calm before a storm. Then on the third day, the messages started flooding in. "Mom, the electricity bill is due. Hope you're not serious about what you said," or "Jason, Mom's crying. Do you really want to do this to her?" and "Aunt Diane, families fight, but cutting everyone off isn't the answer. Let's talk." I ignored them all. And then, as if on cue, the guilt-tripping turned into anger. "Mom, I can't believe you do this to us after everything I've done for you. Jason, you're so selfish," they said. "You think money makes you better than us?" Selfish. That word again, selfish, something they used every time I didn't bend over backward for them. I let out a bitter laugh and tossed my phone onto my bed. Then there was a knock at the door. I knew who it was before even opening it. Jason was standing on my porch with his arms crossed and an annoyed look on his face. "You've made your point," he said gruffly. "Now stop overreacting and fix this." I leaned against the doorframe, arms folded tight. "Fix what?" I asked calmly. "You know what," he snapped. "Mom's losing her mind, the bills are piling up, and what are you doing? Walking away?" I tilted my head slightly. "And why is that my problem?" His jaw clenched. "Because you're always the one taking care of everything. And maybe that's the root of it all," I said softly, "maybe it's time someone else took charge for once." Jason let out a dry chuckle. "Like who?" "Mom. She doesn't work." "Me? I've got my own expenses." I lifted an eyebrow in response. "And I don't," I shot back. "You make more than all of us combined. It's not the same thing." There it was, the real reason they felt entitled to my money. "Just because I earn more doesn't mean I owe you anything," I told them. "I bought that house for Mom, covered every bill, every grocery run, every emergency. And instead of showing gratitude, I get told I just give headaches." Jason exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair as if to dismiss it. "She didn't mean that, she was upset." I shook my head. "No, she meant it. And the worst part? Nobody stood up for me. Not even you," I added. He looked away, silent. For the first time, I noticed it, the flicker of guilt in his eyes. "You don't get it," he finally muttered. "Mom's scared. She doesn't know how to handle things without you." "Then maybe she should have thought about that before humiliating me in front of everyone," I said, stepping back into the house. "I'm done, Jason. I've made up my mind." And with that, I shut the door behind me. The following week turned into chaos. Mom called every relative she could find, spinning her version of the story to paint herself in a good light. She abandoned us. She's punishing me just because I asked for some respect, selfish, greedy, only caring about money. Some relatives immediately took her side, sending me messages about how family is everything and that I'd regret this someday. But others? They started seeing through the cracks. Aunt Diane pulled me aside one evening. "Honey, I didn't realize you were footing all the bills. That's really not fair to you." Cousin Megan chimed in next. "Wait a minute, so you bought the house? And she still treats you like that?" Mom didn't expect people to ask questions. And when they did, her perfect little victim act started falling apart. By the end of the month, she called me herself, not to apologize, but to beg. "Please, just cover the bills for one more month. We're struggling over here." I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and gave her the same answer I'd given Jason, "Figured out." And for the first time in my life, I felt truly free. Days turned into weeks. I expected my mother to come around eventually, to apologize, admit she was wrong, and at least acknowledge everything I'd done for her over the years. But she didn't. Instead, she doubled down on her lies and accusations. I started hearing things through the family grapevine, how I'd turned my back on my own mother, forced her into financial ruin, how I was so full of myself thinking money could replace love and family. And my personal favorite, how I raised a selfish, ungrateful daughter who abandoned her own mother who gave her life. Honestly, it was laughable. I'd done everything for her, bought her a house, paid her bills, made sure she had nothing to worry about. And the moment I stepped away, suddenly, I was the villain of the story. But here's the thing, lies fall apart when truth comes out, and that truth was about to hit her harder than she ever saw coming. It all started with tiny cracks in her perfect story. Aunt Diane, who had always been one of my mother's biggest defenders, called me late one evening. "Honey, I went to see your mom today." "Oh." She didn't seem like she was struggling at all to me. I frowned. What do you mean? She's got a brand new dining set and was showing off a gold bracelet your brother bought her. My stomach sank. She told everyone she couldn't afford food and that the electric might be cut off any day now. Aunt Diane sighed quietly. Well, if that's true, she sure isn't acting like it. It wasn't just her, other family members started noticing things too. How Jason still managed to go on weekend trips, or how Mom played the victim one day and posted pictures at fancy brunches with friends the next. And then came the biggest shock when my cousin Megan called me up. Hey, do you know how much your mom is charging Jason for rent? What? I asked, her saying he only gives her $100 a month. I nearly dropped my phone right then and there. $100. I'd been paying all the bills on that house, covering thousands each month, and Jason, who works full-time, was only giving her $100. That was the final straw for me. I'd spent my whole life being their personal bank, taking on their burdens, sacrificing my own comfort so they could get by easily, and now? As soon as I stepped back. They weren't suffering at all, they were just pretending to because they expected me to come crawling back in any moment. That Sunday, I went back to that house for the first time in weeks. The second I stepped inside, my mother's face twisted into that familiar expression, displeasure mixed with triumph, like she thought I was here to beg forgiveness. Jason leaned against the kitchen counter with his arms crossed and a smug look on his face. Honestly, I almost had to laugh at him. I took a slow breath and set my purse down deliberately before speaking. Look, I want to make this perfectly clear, I'm never paying for anything in this house again, I said calmly but firmly. My mother scoffed at that. Oh, come on, we both know you'll be back soon enough, you need us more than we need you. Jason just smirked in response. Yeah, I think we all know you wouldn't just sit by and let Mom suffer. I tilted my head slightly, giving him a steady, deliberate look to make my point clear. So, Jason, how much are you paying in rent these days? The smirk on his face instantly disappeared. What? You heard me. I said, how much rent do you give? He glanced at Mom, then back at me. That's none of your business. Oh, but it is, I said, stepping closer to him. See, I've been hearing some interesting things lately, like how you've been giving Mom a full $100 a month. Mom stiffened up at that. Who told you that? Does it really matter? I replied, crossing my arms. You've been telling everyone in the family that you're struggling, that you're on the brink of financial ruin, that I left you to fend for yourself. Meanwhile, Jason is handing her pocket change while she's out spending hundreds on gold bracelets. Jason's face was turning bright red. That's, what? I cut him off. That fair? That reasonable? Because if that's true, then my money should have been enough to keep her afloat for years. My mother opened her mouth, then shut it again. Silence stretched between us. I let that hang in the air for a long moment before I spoke again. I'm not coming back, Mom, I said softly. Not to this. Not to being used. Not to being disrespected after everything I've done for this family. I was your daughter, not your retirement plan. And if you can't see that anymore, then that's no longer my problem. For the first time, I saw something in her expression that I hadn't noticed before, more than just shock or anger. It was fear. Because she knew, really knew, that I wasn't bluffing this time. And she had no backup plan. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. Jason finally snapped out of his silence. You're just gonna leave us like this? I turned back to look at him, locking eyes. You left me a long time ago, I said simply. Then I stepped out and left them to deal with their mess. And this time, I didn't bother to look back. The silence that followed was deafening. For years, my phone had been flooded with messages from my family. Requests for money, guilt trips, complaints about how I never did enough for them. But after that night, it was like I'd been erased from their world. No desperate texts from Mom, no angry rants from Jason. Nothing at all. And for the first time in my life, I felt genuinely free. I thought I'd feel guilty or wonder if I'd made a mistake waking up in the middle of the night. But instead, every morning I woke up feeling lighter, as if I'd finally stepped out of some cage I didn't even realize was around me. I went out with friends without obsessing over how much money I had left after covering Mom's bills. I bought myself some new clothes without hearing her voice telling me it was selfish to spend money on myself. I even booked a trip, something I'd never allowed myself before because every spare dollar went toward keeping my family afloat. And yet, even though I stayed silent about it, I knew they were struggling. My cousin Megan kept me updated, though I never asked her to. "Jason is losing it. Your mom told him he's gotta pay full rent now, and he's furious about it." I smirked. "Oh, so like a normal adult?" "Exactly. He's been trying to guilt-trip the rest of the family into helping out, but nobody's buying it anymore." "Good. And as for my mother? She's still trying to save face, but cracks are starting to show. She's cut back on going out as much. She keeps telling everyone that I abandoned her, but even Aunt Diane is starting to question her story. People are starting to see that she had it good with me and threw it all away. That should have made me feel better, or vindicated, but honestly, it didn't. Because deep down, I knew no matter how bad things got for them, my mother would never admit she was wrong. She'd rather struggle and lose everything than accept that she pushed away the one person who'd always done everything for her. And honestly, that's not my problem anymore. The call that changed everything came 3 months later. It was late at night when my phone buzzed. It was Mom. I stared at the screen, feeling my heartbeat pick up a little. I could ignore it, I probably should ignore it. But against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello." There was a long pause on the other end, then a heavy sigh. "You really meant it, didn't you?" I swallowed hard. "Yes, Mom. I did." Another silence stretched out before her finally let out a bitter laugh. "I didn't think you had it in you." "Well, I did. So that's it? You're just gonna pretend we don't exist?" I rubbed my temple and took a deep breath. "I don't pretend anything, Mom. You made your feelings pretty clear about how you see me. I'm just the one paying the bills. And once I stopped paying them, you threw me away." "That's not true." "You did." Silence again. Then finally she spoke up, "I'm struggling right now." I closed my eyes and replied softly, "I know. You could fix this, just help out a little bit. Just for a few months until we get back on our feet." "Nope." Her voice turned cold and firm. "You're really gonna let your own mother suffer?" And there it was, the guilt again. The same weapon I had relied on my entire life was what she was using again, but this time, it failed me completely. I quietly told her, "Mom, I've already given you everything I could," realizing deep down that it was never enough and never going to be. If I handed her money now, I wondered, what difference would it really make? In just 6 months, she'd be right back asking for more, just like always. This time is different, I told myself, but then I quickly cut her off and said, "No, it's not," because I knew she knew it too. And honestly, she did know that. She stayed silent, and I pressed on. "You never really planned for a future without me footing the bill," I said. Now she was starting to see that was a mistake, but that wasn't my problem to fix. Her breath hitched slightly, she looked like she might cry for a moment, and I almost felt bad. But when she spoke again, her tone was icy cold. "Fine. If you want to be so heartless, don't expect to be welcomed back when you finally realize what you're missing." I took a slow breath and said, "I won't." Then for the first time in my life, I ended the call by hanging up on her. I stared at my phone afterward, feeling the weight of what just happened. I had expected guilt to crush me, expecting that familiar ache in my chest that always kept me tethered to my family. But strangely enough, all I felt was peace because this time, I hadn't let her manipulate me. This time, I chose myself. And honestly, maybe that was the biggest win of all. Weeks slipped by, then months, and I kept waiting for the guilt to creep in or for the loneliness that my mom had promised would follow. But it never did. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: relief. For the first time in forever, I woke up without that tight knot of anxiety in my chest, wondering what kind of financial crisis or demand was coming next from my family. I wasn't obsessively checking my bank account anymore, calculating how much I could spare before they came knocking again. I was finally free. Not just surviving anymore, I was actually living. I started traveling, something I'd never allowed myself before. One day, I was sitting at a small cafe in Rome, soaking up the sun and letting it warm my skin. I took a weekend trip to the mountains and hiked along trails I'd never thought I'd have the time or money for before. I decorated my apartment and made it into a real home, one that reflected who I am now, not a life sacrificed just to keep others happy. I went out with friends, laughed until my stomach hurt, and didn't feel guilty about spending money on myself for once. And the best part? No one was watching me or judging what I did or didn't do for them. No one was keeping track of what I owed or expected from me. I was done being my family's human ATM. And honestly, that was one of the best decisions I ever made. Then one evening, while sitting on my balcony with a glass of wine, my phone buzzed unexpectedly. I looked at the screen and saw Jason's name. Almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me, so I swiped to pick up. "Hey," he said softly, quieter than I'd ever heard him speak before. "Hey," I replied cautiously. There was a long silence before he finally broke through it. I blinked as he continued, "I really should have had your back that night at the family dinner when Mom humiliated you." He admitted he stayed silent during her tirade and let her talk because he thought you'd always be there, no matter how much crap we threw at you, you'd keep taking care of everything. He said he thought you'd always be there to handle it all, that he didn't realize how much you were doing until you left and forced him to step up himself. Another pause before he finally said, "I'm sorry." I slowly exhaled, gripping my wine glass a little tighter as I asked him, "What changed?" Jason let out a dry laugh and answered simply, "Mom did." "What do you mean?" I pushed a little more. He sighed deeply and said, "She's still pretending to be the victim, still telling everyone how you abandoned her. But now that he was the one covering for her messes, she was treating him exactly the same way. Nothing she does is ever enough. The more he gives, the more she expects." I nodded silently because I knew exactly how he felt, been there myself. "I don't know how you put up with it for so long," he muttered softly. "Because I thought I had to," I replied plainly. We fell into silence again before Jason cleared his throat and spoke up, "I don't expect you to forgive me right away, I just needed to say all this." He paused and added, "I was a terrible brother, and I see that now." I closed my eyes for a moment as his words sank in. I wasn't sure if I was ready to forgive him yet, but one thing was clear: he wasn't demanding anything from me right now. He wasn't trying to guilt-trip or manipulate, he was just apologizing. Maybe that was enough, for now. A few weeks later, my phone rang again, an unknown number this time. I nearly ignored it but felt like some instinct told me to answer, so I did. "Hello." I answered cautiously. A voice on the other end spat out, "You think you're better than us now?" I let out a sigh and responded calmly, "Hello to you too, Mom." She snapped back angrily, "You've embarrassed this family, walking away like that. Everyone knows what you did," she added sharply. "Oh. And what exactly do you think I did?" I asked in an eerily calm tone. "You left me to suffer," she retorted bitterly. I hesitated briefly before repeating softly, "I almost left, suffer. Are you talking about how I worked non-stop for years just to make sure you were comfortable? Like how I paid all the bills while you sat back and looked down on me? I raised you," she snapped, her voice sharp. "And I gave back 1,000 times more than I ever owed," I responded. "More than any kid should ever have to give." The silence stretched between us. "You think you don't need me anymore?" she finally said softly, her voice quieter than before. I know I don't need you, I told her calmly. And that, I think, scares you, doesn't it? More silence. Then she did what she always did, she burst out laughing. You'll come back someday, she said with a smirk. One day, you'll realize that family's all you really have. And when that moment hits, don't expect me to be waiting with open arms. I just smiled. I won't be. And with that, I hung up for the last time. The end. A life that's finally my own. A year later, I found myself sitting on a beach, watching the waves crash onto the shore. I had moved to a new city, started fresh. Built a new life, where I found peace in the quiet freedom of no longer being expected to please anyone. My mother tried reaching out a few more times, but it was always the same guilt trips and manipulation. I never responded. Jason and I started talking again, slowly rebuilding what was broken. He'd learned his lesson the hard way, and even if we weren't close yet, I appreciated the effort he was making. And me? I was finally genuinely happy. No longer the family's ATM. No more being the punching bag or scapegoat. No more living my life just to make everyone else happy while I neglected myself. I took a deep breath, feeling the salty air fill my lungs. I was free, completely free. And I knew I'd never go back.